this evening. Back to our previous guest at Urban Jungles Radio.
Yeah,
I love all of you guys. You know, I love all of our guests. Each and every one of you, you all bring special things to the table. But I am being such a fanboy tonight. It's ridiculous. I am such a huge fan of Bob Irwin's. His conservation work, I mean, he's been a pioneer. People don't realize he's pioneered so much in the way of herpetology, in the way that we know animals and what we understand about animals, and even just in general when it came to the croc biology. I mean, it just doesn't get much better than that. So I'm totally fanboying out. I'm trying really hard to keep it together. I'm like breaking out in sweats here. I'm like completely losing my cool. So I don't know. It's going to be an interesting night, Andy. I feel like you.
I know, dude. I feel like I'm turning into Chris Farley again.
Exactly. This is the moment everybody's been waiting for. What do you say? God, what do I even begin to say? It's my absolute pleasure to welcome a pioneer in animal, especially reptile conservation, in Australian wildlife biology, in just so many different facets of the biological and zoological world. Ladies and gentlemen, jungle junkies from around the world, it is my absolute pleasure to present the one, the only, Mr. Bob Irwin. Bob, are you with us?
Yeah. Hi, Danny.
Bob, yay!
Yay!
I'm like, please, telephone line, hold it together, please. Bob, thank you so much for coming on the show to let us know about some of the battles you're fighting on several fronts. It's an absolute honor to have you here. Your work and that of your sons has inspired scores of people such as myself, and so it's a major privilege to speak to you here on the show tonight.
Thank you so much, Danny, and it's an absolute pleasure to be talking to you.
You hear that, Andy? He said my name.
I know. I want him to say my name.
Bob, I want to introduce you to my co-host, Andy V., who's also hanging on the line with us, in case you hear this other little voice in the background there.
Hi, Andy. How you doing?
I'm wonderful, Bob. Thank you so much. How are you?
Oh, very, very good. Thank you.
Bob,
I just want to take this moment to say I love you, and I can say that because I'm a secure male and because you're too far away to punch me.
No, I'm a very placid fellow, generally, unless people do the wrong thing by our environment.
Absolutely, I love that, Bob. It's absolutely incredible. I mean, you're so inspirational to myself, to so many countless of others around the world. You come here tonight to talk to us about some of your current conservation efforts. Does it bother you that you have to fight so hard to protect wildlife?
Oh, look, Danny, I get very, very frustrated sometimes because a lot of the wildlife issues within Australia are really common sense, and we need to think of the future generations. You know, it's not just here and now, but it's for all these little kids and their children that are coming along after us. And I don't want to leave them a legacy of total destruction.
Absolutely. And are you getting much support or general support from the Australian government in your efforts?
Danny, the Australian government and the Queensland government are pathetic, and that's probably the nicest thing I could say. Our country, unfortunately, is a country to be really, really proud of, and I am. But our governments don't understand the natural world, and we've got issues here with, if I may take a little bit of your time up.
I think that's okay.
We've got issues here where we destroy thousands of kangaroos each year, and we actually bury wombats alive, and we starve the Fraser Island dingoes, and we destroy dugongs and turtles in a very cruel manner. And all of these issues are condoned by our governments. So I get very, very frustrated. But fortunately, I'm surrounded by some very wonderful and passionate people who really do care, and we just work as hard as we can.
What about the general population? I mean, do they realize what a source of national pride Australia's wildlife is?
Danny, I think we've actually lost our national pride. I think we've lost our way. We've, the Australian people are wonderful, and I wouldn't want to live anywhere else, to be perfectly honest. But sometimes I'm really, really disappointed in our attitude towards our future. And as you're probably aware, many of the Australian animals are endangered and under threat of extinction, and we just don't seem to get it, Danny.
I mean, Bob, even so many iconic species like kangaroos, I don't think a lot of people understand what a horrible plight kangaroos are undergoing right now. Perhaps maybe you can light us a little bit. And when you think about Australia, you think kangaroos automatically.
Yes, Danny, that's true. Probably the most iconic species within Australia would be the kangaroo and that special little koala. Mm-hmm. Well, I'll start on the koala first, because in the state of Queensland, where I live, the southeast corner of Queensland was very well populated with koalas, and we put submissions towards the government for years and years and years, probably 7 or 8 years. And like many other governments, they stuck their head in the sand and just totally ignored the advice that was given. So, Danny, what we've got now is we've got localised extinctions of this beautiful little Aussie icon. That and mate, that situation may have been averted if the government had got their act together. And if we go to the kangaroos, Danny, it's not just it's not just the killing of the kangaroo. It's the fate of those poor little joeys. Right. And the government's method for disposing of the joeys is to cut their head off. Now, Danny, I can't see that any decent person, and I don't care what country they live in, can condone that type of behaviour. Right.
It's definitely never an okay thing, and especially when, once again, I mean, it can be an iconic species or it can be something a little more demure. Just they should not be dealing with that kind of pressure from people. Yeah, Danny, that's exactly right. And in another state of Australia, we've got the southern hairy-nosed wombats, which are beautiful little animals, and the local farmers over there, because they don't like them for some reason or another, they actually bury them alive, so they die over a period of a week or two, and that practice is also condoned by the government. That's an acceptable means of getting rid of them?
Well, why should we get rid of a native animal, Danny? I mean, these animals were here long before humans came on this country, and we don't give them any rights at all, and that's just totally wrong.
Right.
Podcast, Bob Dylan.
And what about as far as, I mean, they're obviously getting human pressure from all sides, habitat destruction, overhunting, and whatnot. What about some of the effects that we're seeing with Aboriginal rituals? I know that specifically affects dugongs and sea turtles, which is another one of the efforts that you're currently undergoing.
Yes, Danny, you've obviously done your homework, which is really nice.
He does that.
Yeah, well, my very good friend and colleague, Colin Bodell, who lives in Cairns, which is in North Queensland, Colin and I have been working very, very hard to to try and stop the slaughter of dugongs and turtles. And Danny, I actually hate to say this, but I'm actually going to tell you anyway.
Please.
That when the turtles are killed, they are brought to shore, put on their back, left out in the sun for as long as it takes. These animals are still alive when one flipper is cut off to be eaten. They may come back a day or two later and cut another flipper off, Danny. The turtle is still alive, and this goes on until the end. And
right.
I cannot believe that, we are supposed to be a modern world country and we're supposed to care about things. And, I just find this absolutely disgusting, this type of treatment. And this treatment of these animals, not just the turtles but the dugongs as well, is also condoned by our government under the Native Title Act, and that has to change. We cannot allow this type of cruelty to occur.
Are they being used primarily for food items?
They are, Danny. The Aboriginal people have hunted dugongs and turtles since they came to this wonderful country thousands and thousands of years ago, and I don't have a problem with that. Mm-hmm. But providing that the animal is treated in a humane manner, and also that the animals are not sold as they are being done at the moment. There is a black market in the meat of dugongs and turtles, and the authorities have been made aware of this for months and months and months, probably about 6 or 7 months now, when the information was given to them, and they have decided to do absolutely nothing because it's too hard for them.
Well, for those of you listening to us tonight, we previously mentioned Colin Riddell, and he's working together with Bob Irwin on this especially. Please do me a favor, go to his website and check it out. He's got a lot more information regarding dugongs and turtles. It's www.dugongsandturtles.webs.com, and you can see some of the atrocities that Bob is talking about. Even, Bob, with these marine species, so unlike the terrestrial ones we talked about previously, are you getting any international support since these animals live in the oceans that are shared by other countries?
Danny, we work with people all over the world if we possibly can, and we're actually making this situation more and more aware as time goes by. Mm-hmm. And we have some wonderful people on board. And we'll just keep working as hard as we can until this terrible situation is stopped.
Now, do you think that along with other human atrocities like genocide and slavery and all these horrible things, we'll one day realize the mistake we've made in how we treat wildlife and the environment?
Well, Danny, I'd just like to say one thing. We've actually stopped. We don't condone head hunting or head shrinking or cannibalism anymore, Danny, do we?
No, of course not.
Well, why
Although
should we
I
condone...
think it should be. Sorry.
Yeah, well, why should we condone this terrible treatment of all these beautiful creatures?
Right.
Danny, we can't survive on this earth without the wildlife. We can the earth will survive extremely well without humans, but it will not survive without the wildlife.
Do you think that there's still enough habitat left in many of these places to support, or as you said, are we just starting to see regional extinctions happening right before our eyes?
Sorry, Danny, I missed that little bit. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was just going to ask you if you think there's enough habitat left to support a lot of these animals that we're battling for.
Yes, Danny, I think there is. We've got development in all countries. That's not just in Australia, but and it's happening all over the world. But Danny, we can have development, but we've got to have development with our environment in mind. and we've got to preserve the really pristine areas that we've got. We can, we've got an issue at the moment, a little place called Tin Can Bay, where they want to put a couple more boat harbours in there. And this is a beautiful, pristine area. Stick their boat harbours somewhere else that they buggered up already. Why should they be allowed to destroy a pristine area? It's just not, it's just not on.
Right. No, it's not. And
Danny, you probably noticed by now that I get a little bit angry when I get stirred up.
and that's okay, Bob, as you should. If more people got angry and got fired up, we wouldn't have to work as hard as we're working to get the message out to everyone.
Danny, that's exactly right, because, unless we had, unless we've got people like you who can get this message out to the world, people like Colin and I are fighting a losing battle. So you are just as important as I am to actually get this message out there.
Well, thank you. I'm definitely going to have a T-shirt made up that says "Bob says I'm important," and let everybody know that, Bob. Because you said
I'll work on that for you tonight, brother.
Thanks, Andy. I'm going to even set up a ringtone, the whole nine. It's going to be great.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
But, I mean, what amazes me about Australian wildlife, Bob, is the fact that it's being assaulted on so many different fronts. Even right now, as you see that you have issues with weather and storms, I know that cassowaries have been really adversely affected as of late by the storms and the floods.
Yes, we just experienced Cyclone Yasi, which was probably one of the most destructive cyclones to hit the east coast of Queensland, and we all feel very, very sorry for the people that have had their homes destroyed and they've got nowhere to go and all that type of thing, and it's very sad to see. And in actual fact, I was up in North Queensland only a few days ago to get a first-hand look at the progress that our cassowary fund was, how it was all going. And I was very pleased that there's many, many people working towards the future of the cassowaries. And but we've got a long way to go, and this is going to be a 2-year program where we're going to have to supplement feed these beautiful animals until the forest can grow again. And I was very fortunate when I was up there to see a big male cassowary with its little chick about 3 or 4 months old, and I was only a few feet away from them, and it was just an amazing experience.
Sorry, Andy, go ahead.
That's okay. Bob, how threatened are cassowaries right now in Australia?
Well, they are threatened. They are an endangered species, and one of the areas that is well known worldwide is a place called Mission Beach, and the population of cassowaries just in that particular area is thought to be less than 50 animals, which is really, really sad. There's probably something like 1,000 birds left in the whole of Australia, and that is not that good either. So we have to work really, really hard to preserve every single animal. Every bird is important, and we've got to work really, really hard to make sure they survive.
Now, is that because are they hunted for bushmeat or?
No, they aren't. Cassowaries are totally protected. Nobody's allowed to hunt them at all in this country. I believe they are hunted in Papua New Guinea, but they're not hunted in Australia, and nor should they be. And then, we're getting back to one of the questions about the dugong, I guess, is because we don't know what the numbers of dugongs are. Should they be hunted at all until we know what that situation is, whether you have traditional rights or not? Maybe we should count the dugongs before we allow the hunting to continue.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, cassowaries, you're talking about this giant, almost apex type of species running around, and it requires protection. I mean, you think if times get tough for a cassowary, they can just hold up a convenience store or something, but they can't.
I think people, if you are close to a cassowary in the rainforest, if you have that fortunate experience, then, I suppose if you aren't used to the animal, I guess it can be a little bit disconcerting. But if you leave the animal alone and don't interfere with it, it's like many other animals. They're more than happy to go along and do their own thing and just be left alone.
I mean, Bob, going back, taking a couple of steps back a little bit to your personal history, was there a specific moment when you decided to change your life and go from being a plumber to kicking off a conservation career? I mean, you're so passionate. I couldn't imagine you doing anything else.
Well, I used to keep reptiles when I was a young person in Victoria, another state of Australia, and but I actually grew up in the bush, and even as a young fellow, when I was 7 or 8 years old, I always played with lizards and snakes, and my mum let me get away with that. And so I was fortunate enough to have a close interaction with everything that happens in the bush. And I think Australia has given me a reasonably good life. There's been a few hiccups along the way, but it's time that I gave something back to Australia, and that's probably the whole idea, I think.
So you learned your pioneering handling skills and techniques kind of along the way. It wasn't something that you just picked up one day and were like, hey, I'm going to jump on this croc.
Oh, well, Danny, it's a little bit like anything. If you young Steve and I, of course, Steve was right into crocodiles too, and that was his big passion, I guess. When Steve and I were contract catching crocodiles that were being a little bit of a nuisance to people, and we'd relocate them or take them back to the zoo. We didn't have a lot of workplace health and safety regulations in our bush camp, and we used to do things a little bit risky, I suppose. But as you get older, Danny, you tend to grow a little bit more of a brain and maybe do things a little bit better. But I think we've improved our techniques so much now that catching crocodiles is not much more dangerous than hopping on a bus.
Did you see yourself, doing animals this intensely well into your 70s?
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess I'll sort of continue with what I'm doing until they put the last nail in, Danny. And I'll probably fight them when they're doing that as well, because there's just so many issues that we've got to try and solve. But there is, Danny, look, there is some wonderful people around the world that are very passionate, very caring, and very understanding, and I'm fortunate to be involved with a lot of those type of people, and it certainly makes my life a little bit easier.
Absolutely. For instance, obviously, coming back to Steve, how instrumental was he as far as taking you to the extent of where you are today in your career? If he wasn't as interested and as passionate, do you think you'd be doing something different yourself right now? That's a
hard one to answer, I guess. But Steve, from a little tiny fellow, couldn't get enough of the Australian outback and everything that lives in there. And it was a father's dream come true, I guess. I believe I was probably the luckiest father in this country to have a young fellow like Steve that wanted to learn and wanted to get out and do exactly the things that I did. And he became really, really good at it. And while Steve was around, I was prepared to stay in the background and just enjoy what happened.
Did you ever expect Steve to have the impact that he did on worldwide conservation? I mean, did you know from a young guy that he was going to be something special?
No, I don't think so, Danny. I think Steve, the longer he was, the longer he was involved with all Australia's wildlife, and particularly as we got more involved in crocodiles, you could see that he wanted to expand and he wanted to get his message out to the world, because he believes, as I do, that every single creature is important. It doesn't matter how big or how small they may be. Every single one of them is important to our natural world.
Absolutely, and no one drove that lesson home, better than Steve did, for sure. How do you think you were still able to profoundly inspire him? Did it take a lot of work, or was it something that he just gravitated to?
I think he just gravitated to it. He was a natural. I mean, he just enjoyed. He couldn't get out into the bush quick enough, and that's what I say. I was the luckiest guy around to have a son that you can spend that quality time with, and it's something I will treasure for the rest of my life.
And as all of us, his contribution is obviously, I don't need to tell you, is just so profound and so important to so many people. Both of you have affected myself personally in so many ways, and I know so many people around the world as well. And I just want to thank you once again, Mr. Irwin, for everything you and your son have done for us.
Thank you indeed, Danny. Mate, it's been lovely to talk to you, and hello to all my wonderful friends over in America.
Yes. Real quick, do you want to take do you have time for a couple of phone calls, like maybe just one or two quick ones?
Yes, of course, Danny.
All right, great. So listeners out there, this is the time. If you want to call in and ask Mr. Irwin a question, you can give us a call at 347-205-9407. So what's new and exciting as far as being up on the agenda in the next couple of weeks, Bob?
We will continue our work, particularly with the cassowaries, but that's going along fine. Colin and I have lots of work in front of us with the dugongs and turtles. That's a very pressing issue because we are really concerned about the cruelty. And every other animal issue that comes up, and there's one issue at the moment that I'm not sure you've heard about, Danny, but we've got a coal seam gas industry starting up here in Queensland, and that will be the greatest environmental disaster that this state has seen for many a long year.
And what is that exactly?
Coal seam gas, Danny. It's where they drill for the coal seam gas. And in this state alone, where they're proposing to have 50,000 wells drilled, and it's going to be many, many hundreds of miles of roads and the destruction of our environment. And they've already starting to destroy the ocean in the Gladstone Harbour by dredging, which will have an adverse effect on all our wonderful ocean creatures.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. There's so many just environmental travesties going on around the world that it can be very disheartening.
I want to ask just a quick question, Danny. I'm not sure if you're going to go
ahead, Andy.
Yet.
Go ahead.
Bob, Steve had a huge impact, especially here. I know for me personally, and here in the States on Animal Planet with his shows. I don't know if you've kept up with what Animal Planet has going on now, but if you have, what's your take on the message that they're putting across now with some of their survival shows and shows that put animals in such a bad light?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I'm just a little disappointed. I think we're portraying the animals as things to be afraid of, or to be cautious about, whereas we should be portraying them as something really, really special, and we should take more care of them. And I think the shows that are on now are putting the wrong message out there.
Absolutely. We both agree wholeheartedly, Bob. It's a travesty, what they've been doing with TV shows as of late. AJ, is this your name? AJ Maggot?
That's me, son. G'day, boys.
All right, g'day. Thank you for joining us.
No worries. Thanks a lot, heaps. I'm not really sure if this is a question. I don't want to get too much into it. Steve affected me greatly. I live in Queensland in Mount Tamborine. I visit his zoo at least once a year. I take my kids there. I try to pass on as much knowledge from that zoo to them so they get brought up that way. We live in the bush. I just want to know if you could give advice to people when people ask for help and that for different stuff around for wildlife and that, without spending money, people that aren't rich, what's a good way to help? Just that's a basic question I want to ask. How can you help without spending money? What's something that people can do to help the environment and the animals and stuff like that, please?
Well, actually, that's a really good question, because I honestly believe every single person can make a difference, whether they're man, woman, or child. It doesn't matter. Every person, and there's many things you can do that actually do not cost money. You can put in small frog ponds, and you can plant more native trees that you can pick up fairly cheaply at the markets. You can actually get involved with cleaning up your local creek, or helping organisations such as RSPCA in Queensland here that are getting right into wildlife now. And you can volunteer for other wildcare groups that, that care for our orphaned and injured animals. There are just so many things that can be done. And please keep in mind that every person can make a big difference.
Yeah, I like to do little things like I live away from the city, so if I see dead animals on the road, I like to take them off the road because obviously other animals eat on them, stuff like that. I also just wanted to say that I was, like, everyone's a big fan of Steve's, but I was more of a fan of what he done behind the scenes, stuff like Beaconsville and tragedies like that, where he doesn't try to get in front of the camera, but he lent his support, in as many ways as he can. I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks heaps for...
AJ, thank you very much.
Keep
up the great work. Be a wildlife warrior at home and do what you can. You don't need to spend money. But thank you for being concerned, and thank you for asking the question. Take care. All right, let's just move on real quick to the next one. Sarah, is this you?
This is definitely me.
Sarah, 30 seconds. Go.
Well, first off, I'd like to say thank you for everything you've done, Bob. I mean, I grew up watching you and your sons just go out and catch crocs and do everything, and I've been inspired by you guys to just carry on your legacy, and that's my life's dream. So thank you so much for doing what you do.
Thank you, Sarah. That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sarah.
No problem.
Take care.
You
bye.
made my day.
We're glad we could do that, Sarah. Enjoy.
Thank you.
All right, Bob. We'll take one more call, and then we'll take you off the hook. I promise.
It's all right, Danny.
502. Who's this?
You talking to me, Donnie Smith?
Hey, Donnie. What's up?
Hey, this is Uncle Morty from USA, Louisville, Kentucky.
Uncle Morty.
That's me. First, I want to say there are a lot of us who may even have been critical of Steve during his life because of the way he handled snakes, but at the same time, he was very influential on all of us. The question I have for you is specifically about olive pythons. I know that olive pythons are a large part of both the culture and the natural history there in Australia. Do you know of any specific initiatives that are involved in preserving olive pythons in the wild? And if so, is there any way that those of us can, contribute financially or otherwise?
Well, I know the olive python extremely well. It occurs in the northwestern part of Australia. Their status is still reasonably common. They are a beautiful snake to keep in captivity. They respond well to very well done captive environments. I don't think they're under any great threat. Many of the areas where the olive python comes from are quite out of the way of normal land development and progress. So I think the olive python is one species that will be around for a long, long time, and they are a beautiful snake. They do get quite large. They can get to 2.5 to 3 meters, and very, very quiet and placid. But I think if you ever had the opportunity to keep an olive python, you would enjoy it.
My wife and I have tried to breed those here in the U.S. With limited success. I always like to look for opportunities to help preserve the species that we try and keep and breed.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I mean, there are reptiles the same as there are other animals that are not so common in the wild anymore, and those are the ones that we should be trying to breed in captivity for sure.
Bob, without taking too much of your time, if you had to pick a single species of reptile in Australia that you would consider to be the most critical and the most need of United States dollars to help, what would that reptile be?
Oh, golly, I
know, I put you on the spot.
Here, haven't you?
Give it to the cassowaries or they'll beat you up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one species of reptile that I personally would be inclined to keep and try to breed would be the Woma python. They are one python that, I'm not sure what their status is, and I'm sorry, I just don't have that information. But on a personal basis, I would like to keep that. But then we have to look at some of our more common reptiles that, prior to the introduction of cane toads into this country, they were performing very, very well indeed. But because some of these reptiles are frog eaters, they couldn't distinguish between, the cane toad and the frog. And some of our monitor lizards have suffered really, really badly with the introduction of the cane toad. And I think it is certainly not quite as easy to keep some of the larger monitors in captivity, but I used to breed them quite regularly when I was at Australia Zoo, and things such as Merton's monitors and mangrove monitors, I believe, should be kept in captivity to make sure that we've got them into the future.
Bob, if we wanted to donate money to help preserve these animals in the wild, do you have a specific foundation or fund that you would prefer that we donate to?
Actually, Uncle Morty, I was going to say, actually, if I could get in here for just a second, I wanted to let you guys know that on our main page, we will have a link, and you can go to boburban.wmv and make a donation via the website there. You take PayPal, and, of course, every little bit helps. And you can find all of the information on Bob's current conservation programs that are going on there right now. Morty, thank you so much. I got to cut you off, but I appreciate your question.
I'm monopolizing all the time.
Thanks a lot. Take care, brother. Bob, thank you so much. What can I tell you? You have completely made my year. I know you've made Andy's year. I know you've made our thousands of listeners around the world so incredibly happy. They're telling us right now we have a live chat going on in the room, and everybody's been going crazy the entire time that you've been talking. Thank you so much for sharing your passion and your projects, and of course your family life with us, Bob. You are just such an inspiration. I can't begin to tell you. And I wish you the best of luck with your endeavors. Urban Jungle Junkies listeners, do me a favor. Please visit Bob's website, boburbanwildlife.com, and make a donation to help out with something along these lines, because Bob is working on a lot of different conservation projects right now. Bob, last question. Do you feel that you've been continuing with Steve's vision to leave the world a better place?
Yes.
There you go.
That's it.
Yes. and Daddy and Andy, could I have the final word?
Absolutely, sir. It would be my honor.
I would want everybody out there to actually speak out and have their say, because there is too few of us that are prepared to speak out, and unless the average man in the street or woman or child speak out, it just makes our job harder. So please, if you have a problem, if you don't like what's happening to our wildlife and to our children's future, for heaven's sake, say so. Get up there and have your say, and don't be politically correct.
Thank you, sir. Well said.
And thank you, Danny. Thank you, Andy. It's been a lovely morning.
Thank you so much, Bob.
Thank you, Bob. It's been a pleasure. Good luck with all of your endeavors, sir.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Bye-bye. Oh, Bob, please say thank you to Judy for me. She's such a gem. You have a wonderful woman.
I know.
Thanks, Bob. Take care.
See you guys. Bye.
Take care.
Minutes. Taping. You get 2 minutes longer than me on my time. You gave me a good rep. It'll help the wibs.
Absolutely freaking epic. Man, what can I tell you? Is everything I hope to be and so much more.
Dude, you have made my year. He has made my year. You have made my life.
Thank you, Andy.
Seriously.
Once again. Thank you guys for listening. We really appreciate it. And my reward to you guys, as promised, here is the world premiere of our new Urban Jungles radio song entitled The Legend Grows.